Hello again, Year 6. Welcome back to your Thursday's writing lesson. Our WALT today is to use colloquial language and dialect to vary formality. Wow. Okay, so let's unpick that a little bit because there's a lot going on in that WALT. Colloquial. Let's start with colloquial. So colloquial language, as I'm sure several of you know, is when we use words that are maybe quite chatty, quite informal in their tone. The sort of words you would use when chatting to your mates outside on the playground. So words like mate, for example, but not being used correctly. You all right, mate? How are you? Had a nice weekend? Not been up to much? So it's those words that are the sort of words you'd use in a really informal situation with someone you're very comfortable with, people you're friends with, and it's that sort of chatty tone. That's what makes up colloquial language. Dialect. Now, dialect are words that are specific to your area. So the sort of words that you only really hear or have that particular meaning in that environment. A good one in Nottingham, really famous one in Nottingham, is the word cob. We know that a cob is a word for sort of a bread roll, a bread bap. But if you go outside of Nottingham, sometimes they have no idea what you mean if you're asking for a cob. We have lots of words like that in Nottingham. The way we use up me duck, for example, is a good one to say hello. So that's your dialect. So colloquial language is that chatty tone, the sort of informal words you use with your mates, and a dialect are words specific to a certain area that you're from. And that's what we're looking for today. We're looking for using that sort of language to change the formality of things, whether something is formal or informal. Our WILF is to understand what colloquial language is. Well, hopefully we've already ticked that one off if you've been listening carefully to my definition. To appreciate the ways that language should differ in different genres. So the idea that in one piece of writing, you might use formal language, in another you might be quite informal, depending on what the genre is. And then to rewrite sentences to change their formality, something that we are going to be doing in your tasks today. I thought what I'd do is I'd start by showing you why it's important we know this. Firstly, it's important we know this so that when we're writing in our later life, in secondary school and when we're adults, that we get the tone of our writing correct. If it's meant to be formal, we know how to keep it formal. If it's meant to be informal and chatty, we can do that too. It's also important because it is something they love to throw at you in your SATs, to ask you to identify which sentence is most or least formal. And there's a couple of tricks to doing that when we're looking at it in our SATs. One way is to look at the language itself. And if you see those colloquial words or dialect words, then that's going to be quite informal. But as you can see from these 4 examples, you can't always rely on that. So let's quickly read through these 4 examples. We're looking for the most formal. Sentence number 1. The way they played was terrible, wasn't it? Sentence 2. I wish they'd put a little more effort in today. Sentence 3. If only they'd tried a bit harder, they would have won. In sentence 4, the team were defeated due to mistakes that they made. Now, none of those are using colloquial language. None of them are really using dialect. I suppose you could argue that saying that someone was playing in a terrible way is a little bit colloquial, but not really. Now, what we have to look at is punctuation. Now, punctuation immediately tells us if something is formal or informal. So if you see one of a few different things, then you know it is informal. If you see a contraction, that is when you've had 2 words that have been merged together, contracted together by adding an apostrophe. Words like wasn't. So wasn't is a contraction. It started off as 2 words, was and not, but it's been contracted, pulled together and made into the word wasn't. If you see a contraction, then they are informal sentences. And we've got a few. They'd, they would. We've also got would have. And we've got exclamation marks. If you see exclamation marks, they are also informal. So straight away, just for looking for contractions, just for looking for exclamation marks, we've ruled 3 of them out. That only leaves the bottom one. The team were defeated due to mistakes that they made. So we would tick that one and we would get our 1 mark. Really worth remembering that. If you have contractions, if you have colloquial language, if you have exclamation marks, then your sentence cannot be formal. It must be informal. Really worth remembering. Okay, so your first task on your PDF is to explain, well, firstly, identify if these sentences are formal or informal, but then also explain why. So the first one is, we arrived at this rubbishy camp this morning, and I'm already fed up of the place. Now, straight away, I can see some things that I've just spoke about in that sentence. So I know that this is going to be, well, I'm not going to give you the answer, but I know already whether that is formal or informal. And then when I'm explaining why, I'm going to mention what it is that makes it formal or informal. And I'm going to give as much detail as I can. If there's more than one reason why it's informal, I'll give more than one reason. If there's more than one reason why it's formal, I'm going to give more than one reason to explain in plenty of detail. When you've done that, you can move on to the second task. The second task is to just explain in your own words what colloquial means. Well, I've explained that to you already. If you can't remember, well, firstly, you need to work on your memory because it was not that long ago. But secondly, you can go back on this video, have a listen again, and then put that into your own words. Hopefully, though, you've all remembered, considering we have only just spoken about it. The final task, after you've explained in your own words what colloquial means, is to rewrite these sentences in either formal or informal, depending on what they were before. So, for example, sentence number 1. The weather was definitely getting colder, and my tent was beginning to shudder as the wind whipped through the barren forest around me. So, let's check for all those things that we know make things informal. Does it have any conjunctions? Sorry, does it have any contractions? Getting my words muddled. No, no contractions. All the words are full words there. None have been contracted. Does it have any colloquial language? No, doesn't seem to have any colloquial language either. Does it have any dialect? No, no dialect. And does it have any exclamation marks? No, no exclamation marks there either. So that one must be formal, in which case I need to write it out as an informal sentence. I can do that by contracting some of the words if I wanted to. I could add in a contraction. I could add an change the sentence a little bit so that it ends with an exclamation mark. That would work. I could put in some colloquial language or a dialect word. Any of those things would work. I'll leave that up to you. But that's what you're doing for those 5 sentences. There's then an extension on the PDF for you to have a look at, for you to have a bit of a think about. But once you've done them, just like before, and just like with Big Read, make sure you're scanning them in, taking a picture or typing them up so that you can send them through to either myself or to Miss Barrett, and then we'll be able to give you some feedback. For now, that is everything I've got to tell you. I'll be back with you tomorrow for your Big Read and your writing task for the Friday, and we'll have done the first week. We'll be back in school before you know it, thank goodness. But for now, and from me, that is goodbye.